Okay. Well, hello, Kevin. Nice to
Hello.
thank you for coming in.
Yeah, of
So,
course. Thanks for having me.
sure. So, for anybody that doesn't know, Kevin Temmer is the lead animator currently for the Amazing Circus and Murder Drones, as well as other animations and glitch productions, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I've seen that you also worked on Blue Sky, other areas of the animation industry. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, give us a brief overview of your background, how you got into 3D animation.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've been in the industry since about 2015. I went to Ringling College of Art and Design, studied computer animation there, and then right from there, I just hopped into the industry and have been hopping from company to company. Like you said, I worked at Blue Sky. I've worked on video games, even mobile games, all sorts of different projects. Um, and yeah, now I'm currently at Glitch Productions, working remotely for them because they're in Australia and I'm in America.
Oh, all
Um,
right.
but yeah, no, it's been a wild, fun journey, and yeah, I've been into art and animation ever since I can remember, so it feels like a blessing to be able to do that for a living.
Yeah, it sounds great. So, what inspired you to pursue a career in animation?
Um, I think it's really just, growing up animated movies and cartoons, and I always really enjoyed them, and I just always felt like I wanted to be a part of that process of creating them and hoping to bring joy to people the way that that joy was brought to me growing up. And even still now, I still watch cartoons, I still watch animated films.
Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah. So, how would you say? Well, okay, sorry.
Are
How
you
did you
fine?
get your first job in animation? How was that experience like?
Yeah, so I went to Ringling College of Art and Design, they had recruiters come to the campus and do interviews there, and that was extremely helpful in getting me my first uh, internship. Uh, One of them was with JibJab, the people that do storybots, and they used to do all those greeting cards. And then my second internship I got through there was with Blue Sky, and and that eventually led to a full-time job there. So definitely having recruiters on campus helped a lot. But there's definitely a bunch of different ways to get a job in the industry, and going to art college is just one of them. But there's so many different ways, especially with all the social media now. People, if you post your stuff online, there's a chance you could be found by a company on there. It's just about getting your stuff out there and letting people know that you're making stuff. But that's the way I got in. There are different jobs that I got through posting stuff on social media. Like, for example, Glitch Productions. I got their attention because I posted a lot of stuff on my social media, and it got their interest. So, I think that's the cool thing about it nowadays is there's so many avenues to get to where you want to go, and there's not one right way. So it's a lot. There's a lot more, I'd say, opportunity now in terms of getting that kind of recognition.
Nice. Yeah, always seemed like a hard thing to get into like the industry, but I guess it's nice to see that it isn't really that hard, at least.
Well, I'd say it's still a challenge for sure. I'd say especially with the industry right now, things are have been a little, crazy. There have
I've
been a
seen
lot
it.
of layoffs and things like that, and so I think it is important to just understand the situation, and I think if you don't get a job in the industry right away, it's nothing to be hard on yourself about because that's just sort of the nature of it. Even when things were a little more chill, it is extremely competitive, and sometimes your path into that field isn't as linear as you'd think. I have friends who have worked a retail job for a little bit before they made their way into the art industry, and that doesn't mean you're a failure. It's like there's so many different paths and ways to get into it, and everyone's on their own individual path at their own pace. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is no matter how you get there, don't be hard on yourself and don't rush yourself if things aren't going exactly the way you planned at first.
Yeah, so it takes time, pretty much. Um, Until other questions, what skills do you consider essential in the field? Like, what do they, especially like when getting a job, what do
Mhm.
employers tend to look for?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So of course, having a good portfolio is very important. Just showing that you can create the things that they're looking for. I'd say that's even more important than like the resume and other things, which are still important, but they're really looking at the work you're creating. And then another thing is also just being someone who's great to work with. You should always you want to be open-minded and friendly and show that you're the kind of person that the studio would want to have around, because this is a very collaborative industry and you want to be able to work well with others and help push each other up. And so I think that is a very important thing, is you don't want to sort of build a reputation as someone who isn't fun to work with. So definitely consider that an important thing as well. And yeah, so I think really like having a solid portfolio and being someone who's great to work with, those are two things that will get you very far.
That's great. And let's see. Oh well, no, I already have these. I already asked them. Um, so what is your typical animation workflow like when starting a new project?
Yeah, so do you mean more of like my personal projects, or you mean like for my day job, like starting a shot, or more in general?
Mm, in general, pretty much.
Yeah, so I guess when I'm working on, let's say, like a shot for a show like Digital Circus or something like that, sometimes I'll talk with the showrunner first about what they want for the shot, what they had in mind. I'll usually just jump in and sort of figure out what could look good. Usually a bunch of ideas pop in my mind.
Mm,
There will be times where I feel like if a character is doing something very specific and realistic, I might shoot reference of myself. A lot of animators out there use reference. I find it really helpful in certain situations because I often pick up on little nuances that I wouldn't have thought of to add in my animation, but I'll see like footage of myself doing something and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a cool little thing I'm doing. I'll throw that in. It'll make the character feel a lot more real. Um, and yeah, I mean, I feel like my workflow is definitely a little messy and
mm,
unusual. I usually recommend for animators to sort of block things out and plan things, but I kind of just jump in, and that can work well for you depending on where you are. When I was at Blue Sky, that method didn't work too well for me.
yeah.
Um, 'Cause the directors and everyone kind of like to see what I had in mind. But at places like Glitch, where there's a little more creative freedom, um, and they have a little bit more trust in me, I found that that method works out pretty well for me. And I think one crucial element that helps me with that method is always being open to criticism, feedback, and changing things. Killing your darlings, being able to delete things and redo things, and not be married to one idea. I think having that skill is so important in this industry because it's so easy to take things personally and to, especially when you create something you really like, you get attached to it, right? So sometimes it can be hard to let go if the the person you're creating for has a different vision in mind. But developing, and it takes practice and you get more used to it over time, I'd say. But getting good at that skill of just being able to let go, and if something, thinking at the end of the day, you're thinking of the project, right, and making it the best it can be. So putting the project above yourself in terms of that personal attachment will definitely take you a long way. But then with my personal projects, I have that creative freedom and I can sort of do what I like. And a lot of those just start with an idea like a song or something like that. And I'll write a song and then I'll plan out a little music video for it. Unfortunately, because my current day job is so busy, I don't have a lot of time to work on personal projects anymore. Um, and that is sometimes something to consider when you're taking a job. Like, do you want that? Do you want a certain amount of free time still? Because, the work life balance is definitely important to at least try to maintain because it can be very easy to get sucked into the job, especially if you have, intense hours. So definitely, like, I'd say, like, keeping track of your mental and physical health is just super important.
Yeah. It does seem like it takes a lot from you, I guess, in like personal life and wanting to do things on your own. But I guess at the end of the day, it's good at least having a job about something that it interests you and you have like some kind of
Yeah,
input in.
absolutely. And I'd say this current job is one that I'm really passionate about. I think there were other jobs in the past where I wasn't as passionate about, so I still had that creative itch to scratch, and that's what my side projects would help me with. But in my current job, even though I'm pretty busy, because it's fulfilling, I don't have as much of that want to create things on the side because I feel like I'm getting enough out of what I'm doing in the day job, which is nice. So it's definitely, there's always going to be some sort of trade off. And I think it's just about being honest with yourself and making sure that you're getting the things you need out of your life. um, and it's a balance, and it's also something that you learn over time as you work at different places and try different things. You learn about what you do like, but even more importantly, you learn about what you don't like, because learning about what you don't like can really help you get on the right path and narrow things down and get to the place where you want to go. So, I think everywhere I've worked, each job, each opportunity has been a learning experience in some way or another for me. Even the jobs that I might have not liked as much, I think they all helped push me to the next step in my life. So I think that's something really important to consider, is that if you feel like you're ever stuck or somewhere where you're not supposed to be, think of it as a possible stepping stone to the next thing, which might get you closer to where you want to be.
Yeah, great. Um, and would you say when you started working, was it always like very specific, like things like animation and character animation, or did you start out doing something first and then kind of evolved into something else?
Um, no, yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to start doing character animation right away. I mean, I started in the industry as a junior animator, so the stuff I was animating wasn't the most exciting stuff at first. A lot of like characters turning their heads to look at something or characters in the background. A lot of studios, they start you with small things and you kind of work your way up. You earn that trust that you can be put on more important shots. And that's something you just sort of grow over time as you practice and get better. Um, but but yeah, I was lucky enough to at least get to animate characters at every job I've been at. There have been some where I've had to animate characters and do a few other things as well. That can tend to happen at smaller companies or indie studios. Sometimes you might have more of a generalist role, or even if you sign on as one role, there might still be a few other responsibilities you have. But when working at the really big studios, usually you're very compartmentalized into that specific thing that you're hired for. So it can really vary depending on where you are and the type of studio you're at.
So it's like a very specific, what do you call it? Like a very specific position they put you in sometimes. Like you're gonna do this specifically.
Right, right, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that, and with the other people that I have been interviewed as well. Um, so, what are some common challenges you face when you're like in animation, and how do you tend to overcome them?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it's a very fun kind of job, but it's also a very challenging job. And you know, every shot you work on is a little different and comes with its own challenges. There can be technical challenges within the animation software like Maya. There can be creative challenges like, you know, trying to get what the showrunner or director or supervisor has in their head. You know, because at the end of the day, that's the goal, is to sort of fulfill their vision or contribute your own vision that supports their vision. And so sometimes figuring out what they like or what they have in mind, there can be a bit of a learning curve there. I think self-confidence is also a big challenge that I still deal with. You know, it's definitely a sort of a fluctuating sort of thing that I think all artists deal with, where, you know, there's a tendency people to compare themselves to others, and sometimes think, oh, that person is that place in their career. I wish I was at that place in my career. Or, oh, I wish I made stuff that looked like that person's stuff. But at the end of the day, I really do think that we all have unique things to contribute, and that I think it's more important to like contribute your own unique voice as opposed to being technically the best, because it's impossible to be the best. If you try to be the best and constantly hate on yourself for not being the best, you're just going to be stuck like that. But if you start to think about what are ways that I can be different, what are ways that I can be good, but in a way that's specifically me, I think that's when you're going to start to stand out more. um, because I know personally that I'm not technically the best animator. There are a lot of animators a lot better than me, um, but I think I like to, when I'm working on something, I like to throw in stuff that feels like me, right? To throw my voice into it, my style into it, and I think that's really helped me a lot in my career, especially I'd say later on, when, you know, when people started to trust me more, or when I started going to studios that gave me more creative freedom, that started to allow me to really throw in my own voice into things. So sometimes you do have to sort of start off with the foundational stuff and the basics, and sort of sticking to what the higher ups want. But the hope is you'll continue to grow and move up, and they'll give you more trust and then allow you to throw more of your voice into it. And you'll probably continue to develop your voice as you improve, because sometimes you're not going to understand or know your voice right away, and that's totally fine. That's something that you can work on over time as you acquire the skills, as you learn how everyone else is doing it. You can then learn, when you learn the rules, then you can learn how to break the rules and how to make things your own.
Yeah. And there's just one question that I had. Do you think you could like, mm, what's the word? Do you think you could like, um, talk a little bit more about how the experience of having like a job in the 3D industry is like? What I,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
especially
go
when
ahead.
you're like starting out.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be honest, starting out in the industry was pretty tough for me personally. I I think coming out of college, I kind of thought I was like a big shot. I kind of had this, you know, ego problem where I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know what I'm doing." And then, you know, I come into Blue Sky and everyone there is so talented, so amazing, and I'm like, "What the heck? I suck. I thought I was good and I suck." Um, and
I
it was
feel
a
that.
huge, yeah, it was a huge wake-up call. And you know, I think if I could have gone back, I definitely would have handled that experience differently. You know, I think I had the idea that I was supposed to already know what I was doing, when that's not the case. You know, when you're new in the industry, the mentality you should have is, I'm going to be open minded and learn as much as possible. I'm going to ask as many questions as possible. And you should basically be a sponge, because if you get lucky enough to, you know, get put in a place that's surrounded by all these amazing, talented people, don't think of them as your competitors or your enemies or rivals or anything like that. They're there to help you. You know, use them as a resource. Um, you know, be kind and open minded, and talk and question. And I think that's what's really going to help you grow in the industry. It's just like being willing to learn and being humble, right? Understanding that like it's okay that you're new and that you don't know everything yet. It's you're always going to be learning. You never stop learning no matter what level you're at. um so yeah, so it definitely can be tough starting out, but I think as long as you're friendly and open-minded, that can take you such a long way. And just and yeah, and just being okay with not knowing everything at first. And I think like so many people starting out in the industry, they really want to prove themselves, right? And that's totally understandable. I think that that part of that, it can be very healthy, but I think it's also important to be honest with yourself and be honest with the people around you at the studio. You know, if you need help with something, if you're struggling with something, don't feel like you need to like suffer in silence and hide that. Honestly, like as a lead, it's been easier for me when the animators are honest with me about what they're struggling with or going through, because then I can help them. Because if they're not, if they're just trying to like suck it up and or try to like work really late and make up for not knowing things, then they're sort of suffering in silence and I can't help them. But once they communicate what they're going through, that will make it easier for them and it'll make easier for me. It'll make it easier for everyone. So I think really that that communication and that honesty are those skills that can just really help you anywhere that you go.
So yeah, it's mostly about being open in mm, that way because it could also like affect the whole operation as well if you don't
Right.
know something. But it's also, I guess, important because you're not really expected, like how you say, like you're not really expected to like know everything.
Right, exactly. And you should, the more honest you are about the things that you don't know, then the quicker you'll be able to learn the things that you don't know, and then you'll know them.
Yeah, yeah. So mm, what advice do you have for like recent graduates in terms of building a strong portfolio?
Hmm. And do you mean specifically animation or character animation, or do you mean like other aspects too, like lighting, modeling, rigging?
Well, yeah, I guess in general, the animation aspect, but I would guess that the other things are also pretty important.
Hmm. Um, I think I think something that could probably apply to everyone is that just because you go to animation school doesn't mean the school is necessarily going to do everything for you in terms of what you need for your portfolio. Sometimes it can definitely be things that you do yourself. For example, maybe adding things to your portfolio that you didn't necessarily do at school, right? So, like maybe a few personal projects, personal animations, or character models, or rigs, or whatever department you're in. Because I remember when I was at college and I was working on my senior film, um, I took some time on the side to animate a few extra shots for my portfolio because I just felt like I didn't have enough in it. That doesn't necessarily mean everyone needs to do that. It's possible that the work you do at school will be enough. And I also don't think you should overwork yourself and stress out about like putting a bunch of stuff into your portfolio when you're probably very busy with schoolwork. Or you were saying recent graduates, right? So if you're at the point where you're already graduated, then it might be a good idea. Like if you're not getting any job offers, it might be a good idea just to take some time to do a few personal pieces for your portfolio. You know, because that's how you build it up, just by adding to it. And as you're adding to it, that's you're giving yourself practice. Um, but yeah, I think sometimes people will maybe get rejections and then feel like, oh, my stuff isn't good enough, and then just kind of sit with it. And I think it's better to just be like, okay, so maybe my portfolio isn't there yet, but I should just keep on adding to it and keep practicing and keep getting better, because that's how you're gonna keep moving forward, right? If you're proactive about it instead of like sitting and feeling sorry for yourself. Because rejections unfortunately are just a common thing in this industry. Um, and it's nothing personal, right? It's like everyone's gone through it. I've gotten tons of rejections from all sorts of companies, Disney, DreamWorks, all over. And
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm doing all right, just because I didn't like end up at the specific places I wanted to end up. I feel like I ended up somewhere that even better than I imagined. And I think that's one of the things about this industry and just life in general is it sometimes takes you places that you weren't expecting and it doesn't go according to plan, but it ends up even better than you expected. And sometimes you do have to go through a bit of hard times to get there, but as long as you just keep moving forward and have that positive attitude, you're bound to end up somewhere that'll work for you. Um, and what was I going to say? Yeah, so I think it's just about that sort of proactive attitude and just picking yourself up if you feel like you get knocked down, because I promise you, if you do get a rejection, you are not the only one. There's so many, and it happen constantly. But
Yeah.
it only takes one yes, right?
True. So mm, I'm thinking about the other like questions that I had. It's kind of hard. So do you think having an online presence in social media tends to like does it help in maximizing your reach for
um,
employers and such?
I think it definitely can. It's not a guarantee, but it's definitely an effective avenue at this point, I'd say, because there's so much now, like social media connectivity with all of that, like even more so than there was when I was looking for jobs. But yeah, I think that like, and especially with like I feel like we're probably going to see more indie studios continue to pop up, and I bet a lot of indie studios are going to be looking on the internet for their artists. So I would say it definitely doesn't hurt. So I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend putting your stuff out there because you never know who's going to see it. You never know who's snooping around on the web looking at portfolios. Um, so yeah, so I'd say like as well as making the professional resume and sending that out to companies, also post your stuff on social media and just create things and put them out there. Um, it's you have to really. I think for some people, it sometimes is hard to sell yourself, but you really do have to have a certain amount of confidence in yourself and be okay putting stuff out there, even when it isn't always perfect. Because I think it's just if you show that you're creating a lot of things and improving, and it definitely could lead to great things. There's no guarantee, of course, but with so many tools now, like Twitter and TikTok, although TikTok might get banned, I guess we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
But but then there'll always be something else. Like that's what people were saying when Vine went away. Like, oh man, that was the thing. That was the thing we had, and now it's gone. And then TikTok is the thing now. And if TikTok gets banned, there'll be another thing after that. But there'll always be tools out there for people to express themselves online, and that's very useful for artists, because that's our bread and butter. That's how we can get our pieces out there instead of like forever ago when what you had to like mail a disc or something. I mean, that was like probably before my time, but um now you can potentially have millions of people see something you put online. um you don't have to jump through as many hoops as you used to, but that also brings up new challenges like, okay, well, now everyone potentially could be famous, which means there's all this other competition, or there's all this other stuff that people are swiping through on the internet, right? So it's like that's why I think it's important to be you and put yourself into what you make, because instead of just being the best, you're being you, and I think that's going to give you the better chance of standing out, because you're doing something that's not just good, but that it's different, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, just trying to have the like unique like touch to your things. Something that
Yeah,
it's yeah, something that makes you you, pretty much.
Exactly.
And what do you think about um I don't know. Oh yeah. What do you think about the whole networking uh, thing? Like, how important do you think networking is in the industry?
I think networking is very, very useful. I think that there isn't one way to do it. I think it used to be more limited on how it was done, but again, like with the internet and everything, I've I during the when the pandemic was really bad and I started sort of trying to build a social media presence on Twitter. um, that's one way I made connections with a bunch of artists. It was a really great tool for that. Of course, it just got completely wacky, and I had to jump off because I really couldn't
Oh
take the
really?
toxicity anymore. Yeah, it got a little too much for me. It wasn't really good for my mental health, but
Oh
it was still a very good tool for connecting with other artists. And um, I used to think that the only way to network was, oh, I had to go to all the conventions and parties and things and actually physically talk with people.
yeah.
But I'm admittedly very much an introvert, and um, I I have good news that it's okay if you're an introvert. There's still ways
Yeah.
to network, even if you're an introvert. With all the technology and things we have today, there are ways of connecting with people on the internet. And I used to do this thing where there were people I looked up to. I would like send them an email or a message, and the worst thing that happens is they just don't respond or they say no. But I would just try to send my stuff to people, and that did help me out and kind of indirectly got me a job. Um, so it is important to respect the people that you're messaging or emailing, and that if they're not responding, to not harass them
Yeah.
and like to not like message over and over. Hey, are you there? You there? Can you look at my stuff? Hey, that's the stuff that will most likely turn people away. But sending one email, one message is not going to hurt. So I would say, instead of sending a million messages to one person, send like one message to like a million people. uh
Yeah. It
yeah,
sounds
because
like you talk from experience. Yeah.
I will say I've been on both ends of that. I've definitely been the annoying person, and I've also been the annoying person. So, you
Yeah.
know, I've experienced both ends of that, which has taught me a lot. Um, but yeah, so I would say it's like it's good to remember that we're all human beings here, and that we all might be at different levels or places in our careers or whatnot, but we're all human beings who want to be treated with kindness and respect. So I think just always remembering that. And it's totally cool to like look up to people, but try not to like put people on a pedestal to the point where you see them as something above human, because
Yeah, yeah.
that can sometimes warp your mind. And I feel like I've definitely been guilty of that, but it's something I try to get better at, where it's like we're all human beings here, we're all artists or whatever, and we're all just trying to make cool stuff and figure out this crazy world. Um, but yeah, so I think just with networking, going to conventions, I'd say is definitely a good thing. It's not something I do, but a lot of people do it, and I've heard a lot of great things about it. So I think that that's also a great avenue to meet people, connect with people, uh, learn things about the industry. um, but yeah, but I guess the most important thing is there isn't one right way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to network. And if you feel like, oh, I'm not good at networking because I don't like talking to people, well, then you can talk to people online. There's just all these different ways to go about it. Um, so yeah, hopefully hopefully that's helpful.
No, no. Oh, no, yeah, that works completely. Um, what kind of conventions do you know about, like that would you would say kind of focuses on
Um,
that, the whole
gosh,
3D animation or
there's
3D?
I'm trying to. I know there's like a few big ones that I always hear about. Um, oh my gosh, it's like on the tip of my tongue, but I forgot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's definitely like a few big ones that I always hear my friends going to, and I'm always like, oh, I'll have to go next year. I'll have to go next year. I'll have to go next year. I
Yeah.
never go.
You're postponing it for next time.
Maybe one year I'll go.
Yeah.
I think there's one coming up actually that I might be going to. Is it like Mo- MomoCon or something like that?
Mama Khan.
I think
Sounds
that's what it's
familiar.
called. Yeah, I might be going to that one, but I don't know. I know there's somewhere. I think there was one big one that got discontinued recently, maybe because of the pandemic. But I know there was like a lot of like technical and art things there. If I think of more, I can like message you them and you can send them to the group. But there's a lot of good ones out there, and yeah, and they're good opportunities just like meet people and also just go to little panels to hear about different what's going on in the industry. You know, just like staying up to date with things going on. Um, but yeah, but if you want more advice on conventions, you'll have to ask someone else because I
Oh
don't know.
yeah. If you do remember them, yeah, totally should a message. I'd like to know. Um,
Well,
and have you heard of any emerging areas within this industry that you believe offer promising job prospects for aspiring animators?
um, I mean, you know, like LA is like the go-to one because there are a lot of uh, companies there. But I know in terms of like animation in general, I think Canada has a lot of 2D animation. Um, trying to think where else. I know California is like the big one. But I'm thinking as things go remote, I'm hoping things will continue to spread out more to other areas. Um, there's a few commercial companies in New York, like if you want to do animation for commercials and things like that. Um, I think Texas might have a few, but I would say in terms of the number of stuff, I feel like California is probably one of like the biggest for animation.
Well, that
It's
sounds
just
good actually. I've been thinking about California.
it is expensive. That is that is my one
Yeah,
more.
that's kind of the other issue. It's like it's a little bit expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's the weather's nice. Um, I do like a lot about it, but it is expensive, and it
Yeah,
feels like it keeps getting more and more expensive. I
yeah, it only
really
keeps
hope
going up.
that more and more companies will continue to allow people to work remotely so that people can just live wherever they want. But we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah. And would you say the industry lately have has like how you're saying like it's a lot more like remote? Would you say that's kind of like the default now, or is it still like a mix?
Um, I wouldn't say it's 100% the default yet. There's still a lot of companies that require people to come in or do a sort of hybrid where you only have to come in some days of the week. Um, I think I've gotten lucky that I've been able to get remote jobs once the pandemic started. Um, but yeah, it really just depends. There's still places where you have to go in. Um, yeah, so it just depends.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah. So the thing is that with all of these questions, it kind of went through all of them already. I'm like, oh crap. Uh, but I think I have another one here. Oh yeah. Um, do you have any like ma- have you ever used like any kind of material or inspiration for like learning in your road to 3D animation?
Um, I mean, I used to like religiously watch clips from animated movies that I liked, and I would just watch them over and over again and frame through frame by frame, really trying to understand what the animator did. I think doing things like that is great for learning, because a lot of the time it's like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can use what other people have done and build on top of that, right? Because that's how art develops. It's like not from scratch, but by I guess like yeah, utilizing what came before and improving upon it, and combining different inspirations into one thing to make something new that feels new. Um, so yeah, just like watching animated movies, watching different kinds of animated movies and different animation styles, stop motion, 2D animation, 3D animation. animation for kids, animation for adults or more mature audiences, just watching all different kinds of things, and also just going out and living life. I don't know if this quote was from that Richard Williams book. It might have been, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can't create the illusion of life if you don't live life, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to take inspiration from your surroundings, and that's also helpful. Just walking away from the computer sometimes, right? Sometimes you just need to get some fresh air, and um, or sometimes you might be looking at something you're working on for too long, and you just get tunnel vision, and you can't tell what's wrong with it, what's right with it. You just need to step away from a bit and then come back to it, and you'll come back to it with different eyes. I remember once I was working on a shot in college, and I was trying to figure out how to do some of the acting. And I went out with some friends to dinner, and one of my friends was just like telling this story, and they were so expressive in the way they told it, and they did something with their hands. It's like, that's it. That's the thing I need to put in my animation. And it was a really great moment, and just one of those great examples of sometimes you just really need to go out there and live life, and that's where the real inspiration is going to come from. Um, and also, just it's just good to get away from the computer because we spend so much time in front of it.
Yeah, especially these days. It's kind of like the norm at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah, it also reminded me a lot about what we're talking about, like using reference from things that like you enjoy or things like that. I actually have like a thing here that I posted with like made with post-it notes. It's like those who do not want to imitate anything produce nothing. It's like a quote I got from Stealing Like an Artist.
that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, and I don't know, it 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 really does like paint a better picture on the whole experience, I would say. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah,
Um, and well, at this point, I think I will let um, other people here in the call see if they have any other questions.
yeah, sure.
But as for a personal question of mine, would you recommend any kind of like any material for like learning or anything like that? I have heard of the Richard Williams book. I haven't really checked that out completely yet, but I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, no, that one's definitely a good one. But I do feel the most that I've learned has not been from a textbook, has been from looking at other animators' work, watching animated movies, and living life and taking stuff in from my surroundings. But I think that the textbooks do have a lot of great stuff in them and can really help out, especially when you're starting out, or even at any point. Because, like I said, I feel like I'm always learning. Like even even at Glitch, like the the animators there, I learn from them just as much as they learn from me. I'm always so inspired by the things they do. So I think like always having that humble mindset, like no matter what position you're at your career, always like thinking like, oh, I can learn from this person, I can learn from that person. I think that's going to take you very far. But yeah, in terms of specifics, I don't really have a lot of specific recommendations, but I'd say just like watch watch a lot of things and do a lot of things and live life and
Yeah, yeah.
be looking for inspiration in life. Be open to it. Have your mind open and your eyes open. It sounds very broad and cheesy, but I think it
No, no,
really
it
does.
makes sense. It makes sense. I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, no, thank you.
Yeah,
Um, well, I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Uh, but I guess we'll get a little bit. Um, well, yeah, I suppose not. But well, again, thank you very much, Kevin. Um, it's it's been a really eye-opening. I think it does put a lot of my worries to rest on the whole like experience about just going out there into the world, specifically around like 3D animation and stuff like that.
yeah,
Um,
No, of course. Thank you for having me. I do love opportunities to share my personal experience in the industry. Because there are definitely the things that I'm saying to all of you are definitely things I wish was said to me
Yeah,
earlier on. So I'm hoping that it will help you all out a bit, but it's never gonna be a linear path. It's never gonna be exactly what you expected it to be. But just being patient with life and patient with yourself really helps. I've definitely had a bunch of highs and lows in my career, but I feel like everything that happened helped me get me where I am today, and the highs and lows will continue to get me wherever I'm going to be later on. So I think that's just being open to it and letting rolling with those punches, and also but also being proactive about it is going to make things a lot easier. Just having that flexible mindset.
yeah, the growth mindset.
Hmm.
Um, well, all right. In that case, that I guess that's it for the session. But again, thank you so much, Kevin, for the
Yeah,
opportunity.
I love that too. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.